right, we've made it to our final installment of relationship goals. And hopefully, if you've been tracking with us over this series, again, you felt times where it's like, man, that nudged me a little bit. That rubbed me a little bit. I've got some work to do to be able to thrive in our relationships. Or maybe you're one of those people who are like, yes, someone's finally saying it out loud. They're affirming some of the things that I've always said, or some of the things I've been telling my adult children that they need to know. And so I hopefully am praying that you've gotten something from this series of talks that benefits your relationship that you find yourself in today, even if you're single, because we want to set you up for success. And much like I've said throughout this series, no matter what your relationship status is, if you're married, single, dating, engaged, divorced, there's something for you in the message regardless of the topic. Now today we're talking about blended families. And maybe you're sitting here and you're thinking, well, great, I came to the wrong service because I'm not part of a blended family. Maybe I should just try to sneak out and get to the Cracker Barrel before the church rush. I know, because the thought goes through my head at times. Let's get to lunch. But here's the thing. There's going to be some topics we talk about today, regardless if you're in a blended family or not, that you can be applying to your life. And so I just want to open today and throughout the talk, I'm going to be talking about my personal experience with being part of a blended family. You see, I grew up in a pretty normal household. Mom and dad were Christians because, well, they came from Christian parents. In fact, my grandparents were not just Christians, but eventually they became pastors of a church in Los Angeles. And then mom and dad, because they were good Christian boys and girls, when they fell in love, they ran off and got married. And you know what people did 45 years ago when they were Christians and got married? They had children, they had little puppies. Hi, that's where I come into the story, right? Because they loved each other and they started creating a family together. And to everybody in our neighborhood, we seemed like a pretty average, normal family. But inside of the house, there was constant arguing, yelling, screaming, shouting, fighting. Now, I was just a little boy, and so I'm not really sure what all the drama was completely about. And even though I'm old enough now to probably comprehend what all the drama would have been about, it's so long ago and so much stuff has happened, the information's pretty irrelevant to me. So my family decided that the marriage was kaput one day. After 18 years of being married, my mother and father decided to get a divorce. I was about a 9-year-old in the 4th grade, somewhere around that age bracket of time. And so if you're an adult child, meaning you have parents and your parents were divorced, I feel your pain because I've been there. I know what it's like when mom and dad break up and you're wondering, will they get back together? And then they don't because they end up marrying other people. Also, if you're part of a blended family because you've been divorced personally, I feel your pain as well because I have a divorce in my past. And so I felt divorce at all angles. I know what it's like to be stung with the broken relationship. I know what it's like to be a kid and see mom and dad break up, and I know what it's like to be a spouse and see the marriage coming to an end. In fact, growing up in California, because that's where I'm from, if you're new here, I've been here about a year in Alabama, and I love Sweet Home Alabama. It's super nice. The humidity's a little bit much at times, but other than that, when the mosquitoes aren't biting me, I love it. I grew up in California, and it's pretty common to have blended families. In fact, I would say if you're not a blended family, you're a little odd, because most families are blended in California. And so I'm comfortable around blended families. I'm from a blended family, and it's pretty normal for me to see blended families. And I just want to say real quick, if you're part of a blended family here in Alabama, and maybe because we're a little bit more Christian, or maybe the statistics don't go as high in divorce here in the South as they do in other states, which they do. But even if you felt a little at odds, like you felt you were less than because you're part of a blended family, don't feel that way. Don't feel that way. I actually think the blended family is a beautiful thing. And if you look close at a blended family, I believe that it shows God's artwork, that God can restore and redeem people's lives and families, regardless of the brokenness. And so actually your family that's blended is tangible proof that God is at work. Tangible proof that God can mend wounds and heal brokenness. And so never feel less than because maybe your family's not as traditional as other families. And so as we talk about this idea of having a blended family, I want to open up what our big idea that we'll be unpacking for the rest of the sermon's about. The blended family is born out of loss and pain. The blended family is born out of loss and pain because there was some reason, something happened somewhere in the history of your family tree that created an opportunity for your family to blend with another family. Sorry, I'll get out of your way. I see you guys reaching around. Your family was born out of loss and pain. But the goal of parenting in a blended family is to heal and unify the hearts of the blended family. Your goal, if you're in a blended family, is to heal and unify the hearts of the blended family. Even if you're not part of a blended family, that's a good parenting tip right there. We all want our kids, when they have a hurt in their heart, to heal. We all want our families unified, right? Now, there are many reasons why you might find yourself in a blended family. Like maybe there was a death and someone passed away. Maybe there was a divorce and that's why you're part of a blended family. Maybe it was because of adoption. You adopted a child or you were adopted. Or maybe it's the foster care system and you're a temporary parent of that child. There are a variety of reasons why you might find yourself in a blended family. Now, blended families, I'm going to throw a stat at you that's not very pretty, but I throw it at you because I want to lean into why we've got to do the work to make sure your family is invested into. Did you know that 67% of blended families will end up in a divorce? That's higher than the average family divorce statistic. And so I want you to hear that number and think, I've got some work to do. I don't want you to just say, hey, let's see how things go. Let's just see how everything plays out. Chances are 67%, and when you do that, will end in divorce. And so I don't want you to end in divorce. I want your family to make it. And so for the remaining of the talk, we're going to lean into the idea of how do we set our families up for success. And so we're going to roll our sleeves up. We're not going to just let our families exist and see how things are going to play out. Now, blended families, I know you've got a whole lot of tension, a lot of things that you're juggling. Like you've got the tension that every marriage has, right? Trying to make sure husband and wife are getting along together. Trying to make sure that your marriage is thriving and that you're investing in each other and that you're doing well as a married couple. But a blended family has a little bit more dynamics at play. Because their chances are you are married into a blended family and your spouse now has brought a child into this marriage. And statistics would show you've probably brought a child into the marriage as well. And so now you're not just blending together trying to make sure husband and wife get along, but you're also trying to get along with their child. And you're trying to be a parent to their child. And if that's not odd enough, you're trying to get your child to be good with your spouse. And you're trying to help your spouse be a parent to your child. And so now you have this weird parenting dynamic of blending going on with tension rising there. And if that wasn't enough, now you've got the relationships between your children and hoping that they can get along as well. And so I get it. There is a complication beyond measure that's going on inside of the family unit when you're part of a blended family. And so that's why I want to lean into this idea that my good friend, Pastor Brian Moore says. He's one of my mentors. He says, be present where your feet are. Be present where your feet are. I get it from a long day of work. You come home from work and you know what's very tempting? To pull out that cell phone and check out for a good hour. You know, looking what's on the social media, what's on Facebook, what's on Instagram, what's on TikTok. Like what is going on? Then I get to go to the news and see what the craziness that's happening in our world. And before you know it, I could blow a whole afternoon on my phone just kind of looking up and down every once in a while and going back to my phone. And as much as I want time for me, I want to encourage you to be careful with that, to really pay attention in that moment, to be present where your feet are. Because you only get one shot at being parent, right? You only get so much time with your kids and then they're growing up. If you've downloaded our Parent Q app, which hooks in with our children's curriculum, it will tell you how many weeks you have left to your kids out of the home. And I only have like 400 and something weeks left until my oldest son, Judah, who's only 8 years old, is out of the home. That's not much time. And so I want to encourage us families, us parents, be present where your feet are. Sure, of course you're going to go on social media. Of course you're going to play with those fancy devices called phones. But make sure you put in time and you invest into your kids. Again, we want to roll up our sleeves. We want to roll up our sleeves because we want to make sure that our families feel poured into. Now, blended families, again, you have all these dynamics at play. And if that wasn't enough tension that you've got to work out these weird relationships, the truth is, because blended families are born out of loss and pain, there's a wound in many people's hearts in the blended family. The children have wounds in their hearts. Potentially the spouses have wounds in their hearts. And so we've got to figure out a way to allow ourselves to process and heal and allow our children to process and heal. And so number one in your notes, how do we help blended families? How do we blend our families? Blended families require healing broken hearts. Healing broken hearts. Again, mom and dad, your family's blending because there was some type of pain and loss in the past. And you're going to have to learn how to love well in this season. And loving well, that sometimes comes with grieving. It's okay for your family members to grieve the loss of yesteryear. That mom and dad will never get married again. I remember when I grieved that loss. When I realized that mom and dad got married to other people, that means it's it. That they're never going to go back to each other. Even though I didn't see that really happening, or there was a little hope somewhere deep down inside. And it took me a while as my families were blending to be okay with this idea that mom and dad, they're not going to get back together. Ephesians 4:31 says this, let all bitterness, wrath, anger, and clamor, slander be put away from you, along with all malice. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving of one another, as God and Christ has forgiven you. Again, blended families, we've got a lot of work to do. At some level, there's a pain of a loss. And even if you're a blended family because you adopted a child, at some point that child experienced the loss of a parent. There's a reason why you're there. And I don't want to discount what you're doing in that child's life. You're a miracle to that child. It's a miracle that you are adopting him in and you're going to be mommy and daddy to that child. But at some level, we have to be aware that that child still experiences a loss in their heart. Something happened there. Now, this verse talks about a lot of stuff. Malice, anger, clamor, wrath, bitterness. If we saw someone coming at us with those character traits, we'd go the other way, right? We would run for our lives. We wouldn't want to be around a person like that. Yet many people inside the blended family are struggling with those emotions. And I struggled with all of those emotions as a person who was part of a blended family. In fact, I have 6 toxic emotions that I believe that happen within the blended family at times and that we need to work on, process, and move away from, or they will eventually destroy the blended family. Pause. All families, we get to places where we have these issues, these emotional character issues. And we all need to work on this. If you're here today and you're thinking, again, the sermon doesn't relate to my life, it's going to relate to your life because we're going to talk for the remaining time today why we need to move away from these character traits and how we move away from these character traits. Let's look at what this is. We say number 1 is bitterness. That's where we hold on to an offense so long that it makes us bitter. Wrath and anger, they just kind of go together. Wrath is uncontrolled anger, where you can't control how mad and how angry you're going to be. Anger is just being easily provoked. You ever someone just barely did something, barely nudged you, and you're, Godzilla is here to explode on people. Clamor, that's where you're crying out for attention. Maybe you're doing something to get attention, consciously or subconsciously. Slander, that's where you're saying bad things about each other. And malice, that's where, regardless if you're doing something good or bad, your motives are just all wrong. Your motives are trying to manipulate the situation and change the situation. Your motives aren't really there for health. You're just trying to take advantage of what's going on in this family situation. And again, as a child that was part of a blended family, I could tell you, I'm guilty of all of those, one time or another. I've been guilty of these on multiple levels. Sometimes I've had these character traits and I know why. And usually when I'm aware of why I'm upset, That's like a surface level issue. The scary one is when I'm upset and I have these emotions and it's so deep, I'm unaware of why I have these emotions. And if I go too long as a person, it's the same is true for you. If I go too long as a person without dealing with this, eventually it spews out to all areas of my life. I'll be driving down the highway just yelling and screaming and honking and hollering at people who have nothing to do with the drama that happens inside of my family unit. I'll go to work and I'll be the jerk to other people, and they'll have nothing to do with the reason I'm bitter and angry and have wrath, because it's spilling out all over my relationships. And I believe if we don't work on this, this will destroy not just your family unit, but it will destroy pretty much every relationship in your life. Because who wants to be around a person who's summarized by bitterness, wrath, anger, clamor, slander, and malice? No one wants to be around that type of a person, right? No one wants to spend extra time around someone who's that bitter, that grumpy, that upset in life. I just want my cheat sheet there. Jesus, the day before he died, he said that we are to love others as I have loved you. Now, if the blended family is a gift from God, if we have to struggle with these emotions at times, and if we are a Christ follower, we need to lean into the idea that we are not allowed to camp in the zone. We are not allowed to be okay with holding on to those emotions, that we need to move past those emotions. If Jesus said, love others as I have loved you, what he's saying there is, hey, the golden rule, that's not good enough if you're a Christ follower. The golden rule is what? Do unto others as you wish them to do unto you. Jesus is saying that's good and all, but that ain't good enough. You need to go above and beyond. You need to love others as I have loved you. Whew, my mic is very mad at me. There we go. Okay. Love others as I have loved you. And I have done some pretty inexcusable things in my life. And you know what's crazy? Even though I've done inexcusable things, Jesus has accepted and forgave me anyways. I didn't deserve it, but he accepts me and he forgives me anyways. And when Jesus said, love others as I have loved you, he's talking about like, you do that for humanity. You do that for the common man. And if you're to do that for the common man, then how much more are we to do that for the family unit? For the people that we call family. And so if we're to do it for the family unit, guess what? Even though you might feel like you have a bone to pick with these people, even though you might feel like you've got issues, like they did you dirty, they did you wrong, Jesus says, love them as I have loved you. Forgive them even though they don't deserve it. Serve them even though they don't deserve it. Accept them even though they don't deserve it. Now, I'm not saying put yourself in harm's way. Like maybe someone was abusive, that's fine. You don't have to go back to the abuser. But what I am saying is you got to let go of that pain, because that pain will destroy you. That pain will destroy you, and it will probably destroy your next relationships if you're not careful. In fact, Ephesians chapter 4 says this: be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, and do not give the devil an opportunity, or do not give no opportunity to the devil. Now, the English language is a pretty simple language. I know we feel like we're sophisticated adults, but if you spoke the Greek that this verse was written in, you'd realize English is simple. And there's actually two different Greek words here for the word anger up here. Now, I'm not going to say it because I will pronounce it all wrong, okay? I was never great at that in Greek class. But what you do need to know is that the first word anger up here really is all about being provoked to anger. And so it's like this. When being provoked to anger, do not sin. And then it says, do not let the sun go down on your anger. But the second anger here is different. The second anger here is about the ownership of anger. It's the ownership of when you're provoked to anger. And what this verse is teaching us, if we're not careful, we can get angry. And just because you're feeling an emotion, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a sin. It's what you do with that emotion that can move you towards sin. And this verse says, hey, don't let the sun go down, which means don't let that emotion carry on with you. Don't own it. Don't possess it. Don't take it on. Let it go. Because if you carry that emotion on to the next day and then the next day and then the next day, you are giving the devil, the enemy of your soul, an opportunity. And what type of opportunity does he want? He wants to destroy your life. He wants to destroy all relationships that are going on in your life. And so let's bring this back to the family unit. Maybe you feel like someone did you wrong, your spouse or your kid or your mom or your dad, and you're angry. They provoked you. They took away your security. They took away your foundation. You thought mom and dad were supposed to be like the representation of Christ in the church, and now they've destroyed and shattered that image. How am I supposed to have faith when my family unit can't stay together? And so maybe you're bitter and you're upset, and you feel like, man, I'm allowed to be angry because they did me wrong. I have a right to be angry. I'm not going to forgive this. I'm going to take this on to the next day with me. And what this is teaching you is, hey, this has an opportunity to destroy not just your relationships that you have in your life, but it has the opportunity of destroying your family. And so blended families, you've got some pain in your past. And you've got to be careful because there might be some wounds that need to be healed. And we need to not hold on to the grudge. We need to not take this anger with us as if we own that anger. Because when we take the anger on and we carry it with us, we open ourselves up to allow the enemy of our soul to destroy everything that God's doing in the context of your family. How much more is it his plans than to divide up your family? How much more is it his plans than to keep you from having a healthy relationship with your spouse or your kids or your mom or your dad? How much more is it his plans to take that wound that you have and continue to pour salt and pain on that? How much more is it his plans that you let that anger never let you heal, and forever you're kind of broken? That sounds like the enemy of your soul's plans for your life. Do not fall into the trap that you feel like you should be angry with someone. Do not fall into the trap that you feel you should own that anger of someone for more than a period of time. Figure out how to let go of that, because if you don't, the recipe, if you go to the next slide, the recipe is that you'll end up bitter. If you hold on to that anger and that offense, you're going to end up bitter. And I know that because I've been there myself. I've been there myself as a kid that was part of a blended family. And so those toxic emotions are right there on your outline. I'm going to be referencing them for the rest of the time that we have together because we're going to talk about how do we remove those 6 toxic emotions from your life and how do we blend our family regardless of those 6 toxic emotions. Well, number 2 in your notes, blend your family with kindness. Start by blending your family with kindness. Now, this isn't going to happen all at once. This is going to take some time, and you can't force it. I'm going to share 2 stories, both sides of my blended family. Yep, that's right, because when mom and dad both got married to other people, I got double the family. Right? We've got mom's family and the family she married into, and we got dad's family and the family that he married into. Let's start on mom's side of the family. Mom and dad broke up and divorced about when I was 9 years old or in the 4th grade. And really fast, I learned that childhood was over. It was time for me to be the man of the house. And basically what that meant is I had to figure out a way to protect mom. I had to figure out how to do all the man chores of the house. I had to make sure that mom was taken care of. And so I had to grow up real fast. Childhood was over. And for years, mom would date, losers and creeps. Imagine trying to size someone up when you're in middle school to see if you should allow them into your house. That's the kind of childhood that I had. Eventually, mom would marry a good guy named Hugh. And Hugh was a good guy, but because of the years of me having to be the man of the house, it was hard for me to accept Hugh. I wasn't comfortable with it. And it probably took me a good 1.5 to 2 years after them being married to finally realize that Hugh is a good person, that Hugh isn't a bad guy. And it finally took me, probably after 2 years, to realize I don't have to be the man of the house for my mother anymore. That's now Hugh's job. And I remember as a young adult, because that's how long it took, I remember as a young adult when that all clicked in my mind. And when I subconsciously handed the baton to Hugh and allowed Hugh to be the man of the house, it was like a huge weight was lifted off of my shoulders. Now I was talking about my dad's side of the family and blending over there. Because of the courts and the way things went down in custody hearings, I wasn't really allowed to see my dad much all of my teenage years, all of my kid years. And so I had to wait till I was 18 to build a relationship with my dad. And so when I turned 18, because the courts don't care when you're 18, you're an adult, you go do your own thing. And so when I turned 18, I started to invest into the relationship I didn't have, hoping to build a relationship with my dad. And I loved hanging out with my dad. We got along so much. In fact, it's funny how much similar we are to each other. We geek out about the same topics and the same things, and we just hit it off. It was like no time ever changed, other than I'm a man now, but it was like I was back at 9 years old, just having a blast with my dad. The only problem is 10 years has gone by. I'm about 19 years old now, and I'm building this relationship with my dad. And my dad has had a good 10 years of his new family blending in. And when my dad married again, I got a new mother, a new brother, and a new sister. And they all figured out how to blend in 10 years ago. And so they were actually in a rhythm. They felt like family to each other. And me coming into the equation, it wasn't like, hey, I'm the long-lost son that you didn't know about. They knew I existed. They knew there was a chance one day that they would blend in some of my dad's kids. They only had to blend one in. And it was a lot easier for them to blend that one in. They were nice, and they were sweet, and they were accommodating, and they were great. And for me, when I came in, it was like, whoa, this is weird. This is different than anything I've ever seen, because when I was 9, it was mom and dad and my sister that was a family unit. And I hadn't seen dad, part of another family unit, since then. I knew about it in my mind, but I hadn't saw it with my eyes. And it was like PTSD all over again. I would go back to those 6 toxic emotions because I didn't know how to handle it. It's like I slipped back into the idea, oh yeah, dad and mom will never, ever, ever get back together because he's part of the new family. And they were so nice to me, and it was just awkward. I think deep down inside, I struggled with the idea that if I love my stepmom, if I love my stepbrother, if I love my stepsister, then that goes against my family. Like if I love her as mom, will it take away from my biological mom? And if I love my stepsister as a sister, will it take away from my biological sister? And I wrestled with those issues, and I threw walls up, and I fought that because I wanted to make sure that even though I loved them as humans, I loved my family more. And it was just a fool's errand to think that way. I was blowing it big time. And they were continuing to push forward with kindness. They accepted me and loved me regardless if I understood what was really happening in the family. And I remember the day when I realized what I was doing and how I was holding myself back from blending in. It wasn't something that they were doing that was holding me back from blending in with them. I was choosing not to blend in with them. And I remember the moment that I chose to blend in with them, things worked better. I actually remember the first time I called my stepmother, which I'm just using the word step for conversation's sake. We try not to say it in my household. But I remember the time when I called my stepmother Mom for the first time. And tears came out of her eyes. You know why tears came out of her eyes? There were tears of joy. Why? Because she loves me. She wouldn't cry if she didn't love me. She wouldn't cry if she didn't care about me, but she loves me. And so she cried when I called her Mom for the first time. She was finally feeling love coming back her direction after years of her sending love my direction. Again, blend the family with kindness. Blend the family with kindness. You can't force it. I had to grieve some emotional pain. I had to figure out that I was living in an unhealthy space. And it took me time to get up to speed to blend in with my dad's side of the family. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 32, we read it a moment ago, but I want to point out these words as we read through it. Here's what it says. Be kind. Say kind. Cool, you're paying attention today. Okay, be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving of one another, as God in Christ forgave you. Again, everyone in the blended family is coming from a place of wound. Let's acknowledge it and be okay with it. We can't force it. We've got to be okay with people healing their wounds. The next thing I want to encourage families as you blend in and you're trying to move away from those 6 toxic emotions is to blend your family with compassion. Blend your family with compassion. Again, that verse says this: be kind to one another, tender-hearted, say tender-hearted. Forgiving of one another as God in Christ forgave you. Parents, mom and dad's in the room, adoptive parents, you need to handle this transition time very wise, because how you handle this time of transition will make all the difference how those kids and your kids adapt to this blended family. So, I want to encourage you, if you're not their biological mom or dad, don't try to be the supreme authority in their life. Let the spouse that you're married to be the supreme authority. They're used to mom being mom. They're used to dad being dad. But you're different. And it's going to take them time to look at you as a regular parent figure. It's nothing offensive. It just takes time. Look, there's this myth in American culture that we can find relationships. And it's not just, and we believe it at multiple levels, but think about it. You hear people break up all the time. Well, I guess he just wasn't the one. I've got to go find that one that I'm going to fall in love with out there. I've got to go find the right person to be in a relationship with. I've got to find that relationship. Relationships are not found. Relationships are built, and they're built over a period of time. The same is true for parenting. Parenting is not just found because mom and dad got married and the court gave you a marriage license. That parental figure, it's gonna take time for them to own in on that, to be okay with you being one of their moms or one of their dads. And so instead of being the supreme authority in this season, I want to encourage you to be the coach. Coach still calls boundaries, right? A coach doesn't want any of their athletes hurt, so you can still take care and call boundaries and make sure the kid's not playing in the street to get ran over by a car, right? You can still wear the coach hat in there, but a coach is different than being the supreme authority over that kid. Now, of course, there's going to be boundaries to all of this wisdom that we're sharing about today, but overall, wear the hat of coach as you're building a relationship with this child. And remember, your kids are going through a range of emotions. Again, they're trying to figure out how they feel about you being married to their mom or dad. They're trying to figure out about how they feel about you being one of their parents. They're trying to figure out how they feel about you having kids. And they're trying to figure out what this means for their other family that they've got to be a part of. Because your kids aren't just juggling the dynamics of your blended family. Your kids are juggling 2 blended families dynamics. So they got 2 households they go home to. They got 2 sets of parents that they go home to. They got 2 sets of rules that they're going home to. They got 2 sets of value systems that they're going home to. And so we got to understand as parents, there's a lot going on in your kid's mind and what they're struggling with, and probably more than they can comprehend when you're part of a blended family. And so I want to encourage you, have compassion for your kids and what they're going through. Be tender-hearted for what your kids are going through. The 4th way we can move away from those toxic emotions and help our families blend is that we blend your family with forgiveness. Blend your family with forgiveness. You know what's funny about forgiveness? You can't teach it. Amen. I can tell you all day long that forgiveness is the healing prescription to your pain and your hurt. I've led many recovery ministries. Hi, my name's Chris. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ that struggles with alcohol. That's what we talk. That's how we say it at Re-Engage, Regeneration, and Celebrate Recovery. Okay, I've been down the road of a 12-step Christ-centered program. I know that healing is found in forgiveness. But I can't teach it to you. I can talk about it intellectually with you. You could hear it, but forgiveness is caught more than it's taught. You've got to see someone out there forgiving to learn what true forgiveness looks like. Thankfully for me, when you're part of a recovery group, it's one of the steps that you've got to make amends. Honestly, it's not in this order, but I think that it's probably the second most important thing you can do. I think the first one is figure out that higher power is Jesus Christ. And the second thing is forgiving. I actually think it's more important than sobriety. Not that sobriety is not important. Why? Because your sobriety is a trigger out of the pain, right? Your lack of sobriety, at least, is a trigger out of the pain, a coping mechanism why I was running to that bottle. And so I can't teach you what forgiveness looks like, but you can see someone exercise and practice that forgiveness. And your kids need to catch you living out forgiveness. Again, Jesus said the night before he died, love others as I have loved you. It's a command. It's a command from Jesus Christ himself that we are to forgive. We are to forgive even when the other person does not deserve it. Now, maybe you're part of a past relationship that was abusive and it's not safe. I'm not saying you storm over there and put yourself in harm's way and say, I forgive you. I don't want you in harm's way. But inside your heart and your mind, you need to get to a place where you can let it go and say, I forgive that person. Okay? Because that person's pain is hurting you. It's the devil's plan. Again, earlier, what did we say? When we hold on to anger, when we hold on to hurt, like they did something to me and I deserve to hold on to this, it's the devil's plan for your life to destroy any good relationship happening, to destroy your family unit, to make you a grumpy, bitter person, to keep you as far away from Jesus, because then you're not going to bring anybody into Jesus because you're going to repel people from Jesus, right? It's the enemy's plan for your life. And so we've got to figure out, what does forgiveness look like? And if you haven't seen it exercised, if you haven't seen it done, you need to go find someone or hang around with someone and see people forgive other people. Go to a 12-step program and start to getting to know people. You'll fall in love with that group of people. You'll realize they're kind of just like you. And you'll realize what forgiveness looks like because you'll see them exercising forgiveness. Here's the thing about forgiveness. It's more about for you than it ever is for the person that offended you. When you choose to forgive, it's like letting go of that balloon. You ever let go of a balloon? As a kid, it breaks your heart, right? And it floats away into the sky. That's what forgiveness looks like. When you choose to forgive, you let go of that drama, that pain, that issue that you've had, and you let it float away into the sky. And you move forward. You take back that rent-free space that you were giving someone in your mind of that pain and that suffering. Now, here's the thing about forgiveness. Forgiveness is actually the key to getting away from those 6 toxic emotions. The more you forgive, the more freedom you will find. They're linked together. The less you forgive, the more bound up you'll find yourself to those 6 toxic emotions. And so we've got to learn to forgive those inside the family unit. Kids who are part of a blended family, if you are in the room, even if you're teens, so what? Your mom and dad blew it at one time. Get over it. Jesus says, forgive. Doesn't make it right, but you're allowing the enemy of your soul to destroy your family and destroy your heart and to destroy your relationships. Do not give the enemy a foothold. Choose to forgive. Choose to move forward. It's not about if they did you dirty or not. I get it. They did you dirty. It's not about saying, I'm letting them off the hook. It's about letting God heal your heart. Parents in the room, you're guilty too. Let me share how this matters to your kids more than your kids forgiving. My mom did not do the work that I'm talking about. She didn't figure out how to forgive. Parents, you've got to forgive your ex. Why? Because you're co-parenting, and those kids are in their life too. And you've got to be able to be in the same room as that person. There's going to be sporting events, graduations, proms. There's going to be the day they get married. And you've got to figure out, how do you play nice with others? You don't have to be your ex's best friend. I'm not saying that. You got to be civil. You got to be able to hang out in the same room and not explode and not be awkward and just be okay and not try to dig a dagger into them by leaning in and giving your new hubby or wife a kiss to annoy them. Like, stop being weird and childish about it because your kids are at risk. Here's what this means. because my mom and dad could not get along in the same room, you think the spouse is the bad guy or the bad girl. What you do is you put it on your kids. Because now you've said to your kids, you've got to pick. You've got to pick who's coming to that event. You've got to pick who's coming to that milestone. Is it going to be me or your father? Me or your mother? And you're putting a kid in a hard place. And throughout my life, I had to always pick if it's going to be dad or mom at the sporting event. Is it going to be dad or mom for the prom pictures before we leave in the limo to prom? Is it going to be dad or mom at graduation or baccalaureate? Is it going to be dad or mom on my wedding day? Ooh. I am not a fan of wasps. That is a wasp. Okay. That's funny. And we're done. Jesus saves. We're out of here. My mom didn't get to go to my wedding. She didn't get to see Stephanie and I get married. She didn't know what it looked like to see Stephanie and I commit those vows to each other. She didn't get to smell the flowers. She didn't get to be part of the wedding photos. She didn't get to dance with her son on his wedding day because of pride. Because of pride. And unfortunately, by the time this wedding took place, too many years of built-up pride had happened. And it was just too big of an ask for her to get to a point to say, I can go with your father being there. So instead of being at a very special moment in my life, she was at home, and it felt like an average day. She had tears that day, but they weren't tears of joy. They were tears of sorrow. Parents, you pick tears of sorrow or tears of joy. You've got to play well with others. It's important. It's important more for your kids than it is for you. But it is important for you as well, because that anger, that pain that you're holding on to will create bitterness in your life. Again, Ephesians 4:32. Be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving. Say forgiving. Of one another, as God and Christ has forgave you. Now, the last thing I want to close today's message with is that the church is the ultimate blended family. The church is the ultimate blended family. When I look around the room, you guys all look different from each other. We've got tall, skinny, we've got short and chubby, we've got gray, we've got dark hair, we've got blonde, we've got glasses, we've got little eyes, little beady eyes, we got big bug eyes in the room, right? We got smelly and good and bad, right? You guys just all look different than each other. And that's a beautiful thing. You got white, we got Asian, we got black. It's wonderful. It's the beautiful tapestry of God's creation. He made you beautiful just the way that you are. We've got old, we got young. Okay, I'll stop saying it. We are all a blended family. Look at Scripture. It's clearly communicated. Jesus is the bridegroom. The church is the bride. When we say yes to a relationship with Jesus, he adopts us in as children of God. I see a metaphor coming along here. If you are not part of a church, you are spiritually homeless. I'm going to say that again. If you are not part of a church, you are spiritually homeless. And I want to encourage you, lean into Wilson Avenue. This is an amazing group of people that we've got here. We have people who want to be in your corner. We want to be your tribe. We want to be your network. We want to be there on the good days, to cheer you on and to celebrate and throw a party. And we want to be there on your worst days, to be a shoulder to cry on. Did you know when God created you, he didn't just create you to have a relationship with you, but he created you to do life in the context of community. Specifically, he created you to do it in the context of Christian community. Your relationship with Jesus is a very personal thing, but it was never meant to be a private thing. Your relationship with Jesus is not just expressed one-on-one as you interact with God, it's also expressed as you interact with other people. You can feel God moments when you're hanging out with the church, when you're spending time with the church, when the church is pouring into you, when you're celebrating with the church, when you're pouring into people in the church. And so if you're spiritually homeless because you don't have a place to call home, I want to encourage you, keep checking out Wilson Avenue. Keep coming back. Keep investigating what God's offering here in our church community. Maybe you're spiritually homeless because, you've just never said yes to Jesus. Or maybe you said yes to Jesus, but you walked away from Jesus a long time ago. And you're at a place where you're ready to say either yes for the first time or recommit your life to Jesus. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to do that in a moment. But I want you to know, everything I just said about the church, how we want to be there for you in the good times and the hard times, that we would accept you in all of your mess, and we will move forward with you. With whatever mess you have, Jesus wants to do the same in your life as well. He loves you just the way that you are. You don't have to leave church and try to get your life together, then come back when you're ready. That's not how Jesus rolls. Jesus wants you just the way you are. He accepts you the way you are. He loves you the way you are. He's here with you, nudging your heart. But he loves you way too much to leave you the way that you are. He's got plans for you, plans of good, wonderful plans for your life. And so I want to give you the opportunity to say yes to him. So would everybody just close their eyes and bow their heads? If that's you, then you either want to commit or recommit your life to Jesus. Again, we said earlier, Scripture says that the Holy Spirit is reading our hearts and minds and praying on our behalf. God is already praying for you to make that decision. He's listening to what you're saying in your heart and your mind. Just say yes to him. If you said yes to him, would you pray this prayer? Jesus, I accept you as Lord and Savior of my life. I give you my brokenness. I accept this forgiveness that you give, this grace, undeserved forgiveness. Help me, Lord. Help me live for you. Help me walk with you. Surround me with people who encourage my walk. I believe you died on that cross for my sin, and you rose again on that Easter Sunday, so that way I can have a direct relationship with you. Thank you for never giving up on me, Jesus. Thank you for always accepting me, Jesus. Help me live today for you. I accept you as Lord and Savior of my life. Maybe you're here today and you're part of a blended family, or maybe you just struggle with those 6 toxic emotions that we shared about. If that's you, would you pray with me? Jesus, we leave these emotional pain with you at the foot of the cross. Regardless of the pain and the hurt and the wrong that someone did in my life, God, I'm leaving it with you at the cross. And I'm boldly walking away from the cross, knowing you're walking away with me, Holy Spirit. It's been a habit to be bitter and hurt and in pain, God. So help me as I learn this new way of living: forgiveness, healing, joy, love. I know it's the fruit of your Spirit, Jesus, that could come out in my life. Help me not just feel that, but to give that to my family, my friends, my neighbors, and my community. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.